Around the World in 80 Days, Chapter 9, in which the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean prove propitious to the designs of Phileas Fogg. The distance between Suez and Aden is precisely 1,310 miles. The regulations of the company allow the steamers 138 hours in which to traverse it. The Mongolia, thanks to vigorous exertions of the engineer, seemed likely, so rapid was her speed, to reach her destination considerably within that time. The greater part of the passengers from Brindsley were bound for India, some for Bombay, others for Calcutta by way of Bombay, the nearest route thither, now that a railway across the Indian peninsula. Among the passengers was a number of officials and numbers of officials and military officers of various grades, the later being either attached to the regular British forces or commanding the sepoy troops, and receiving high salaries ever since the central government has assumed the powers of the East India Company. For the sub-lieutenants get £280, brigadiers £2,400, and generals of divisions £4,000. What with the military men, a number of rich young Englishmen of their travels, and the hospitable efforts of the purser, the time passed quickly on the Mongolia. The best fare was spared at the cabin tables at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 8 o'clock supper, and the ladies scrupulously changed their toilets twice a day, and the hours were whirled away, when the sea was tranquil, with music, dancing, and games. But the Red Sea is full of caprice and often boisterous, like most long and narrow gulfs. When the wind came from the African or Asian coast, the Mongolia, with her long hull, rolled fearfully. Then the ladies speedily disappeared below, and the pianos were silent. Singing and dancing suddenly ceased. Yet the good ship ploughed straight on, unretarded by wind or wave, toward the straits of Bab el Mandeb. What was Phileas Fogg doing all this time? It might be thought that in his anxiety he would be constantly watching the changes of the wind, the disorderly raging of the billows, every chance, in short, which might force the Mongolia to slacken her speed, thus interrupt his journey. But if he thought of these possibilities, he did not betray the fact by any outward sign. Always the same impassible manner of the Reform Club, which no incident could surprise, as unvarying as the ship's chronometers, and seldom having the curiosity even to go upon the deck. He passed through the memorable scenes of the Red Sea with cold indifference, did not care to recognize the historic towns and villages which, along its borders, raised their picturesque outlines against the sky, and betrayed no fear of the dangers of the Arabic Gulf, which the old historians always spoke of with horror, and upon which the ancient navigators were ventured without propitiating the gods by ample sacrifices. How did this eccentric personage pass his time on the Mongolia? He made his 4 hearty meals every day, regardless of the most persistent rolling and pitching on the part of the steamer, and he played whist indefatigably when he found partners as enthusiastic in the game as himself. A tax collector on his way to a post at Goa, the Reverend Decimus Smith returning to his parish at Bombay, and a brigadier general of the English army who was about to rejoin his brigade at Benares, made up the party, and with Mr. Fogg played whist by the hour together in absorbing silence. As for Passepartout, he too escaped seasickness, and took his meals conscientiously on the forward cabin. He rather enjoyed the voyage, for he was well fed and well lodged, and took great interest in the scenes through which they were passing, and consoled himself with the delusion that his master's whim would end at Bombay. He was pleased, on the day after leaving Suez, to find on the dock the obliging person with whom he had walked and chatted on the quays. "If I'm not mistaken," said he, approaching the person with the most amiable smile, "you are the gentleman who so kindly volunteered to guide me at Suez. Ah, I quite recognize you. You are the servant of the strange Englishman." "Just so, Monsieur Fix." "Monsieur Fix," resumed Passepartout, "I'm charmed to find you on board. Where are you bound?" "Like you, to Bombay." "That's capital. Have you made this trip before?" Several times. I'm one of the agents of the Peninsular Company. Then you know India? Why, yes, replied Fix, who spoke cautiously. A curious place, this India. Oh, very curious. Mosques, minarets, temples, fakirs, pagodas, tigers, snakes, elephants. I hope you will have ample time to see the sights. I hope so, Monsieur Fix. You see, a man of sound sense ought not to spend his life jumping from steamer upon railway train and from railway train upon steamer again, pretending to make the tour of the world in 80 days. No, all these gymnastics, you may be sure, will cease at Bombay. And Mr. Fogg is getting on well? Asked Fix, in the most natural tone in the world. Quite well, and I too. I eat like a famished ogre. It's this sea air. But I never see your master on deck. Never. He hasn't the least curiosity. Do you know, Mr. Passepartout, that this pretended tour in 80 days may conceal some secret errand, perhaps a diplomatic mission? Faith, Monsieur Fix, I assure you I know nothing about it, nor would I give half a crown to find out. After this meeting, Passepartout and Fix got into the habit of chatting together, the latter making a point to gain the worthy man's confidence. He frequently offered him a glass of whiskey or pale ale in the steamer bar-room, which Passepartout never failed to accept with graceful alacrity, mentally pronouncing Fix the best of good fellows. Meanwhile, the Mongolia was pushing forward rapidly. On the 13th, Mocha, surrounded by its ruined walls where the date trees were growing, was sighted, and the mountains beyond were espied vast coffee fields. Passepartout was ravished to behold this celebrated place, and thought that, with its circular walls and dismantled fort, it looked like an immense coffee cup with saucer. The following night they passed through the straits of Bab el Mandeb, which means in Arabic the Bridge of Tears, and the next day they put in at the steamer point, northwest of Aden Harbor, to take on coal. This matter of fueling steamers is a serious one, as such disasters from coal miners. It costs the Peninsular Company some £800,000 a year. And these distant seas, coal is worth 3 or 4 pounds sterling a ton. The Mongolia had 1,650 miles to traverse before reaching Bombay, and was obliged to remain 4 hours at the steamer point to coal up. But this delay, as it was foreseen, did not affect Phileas Fogg's program. Besides, Mongolia, instead of reaching Aden on the morning of the 15th when she was due, arrived there the evening of the 14th, a gain of 15 hours. Mr. Fogg and his servant went ashore at Aden to have the passport again visaed. Fix, unobserved, followed them. The visa procured, Mr. Fogg returned on board to resume his former habits, while Passepartout, according to custom, sauntered about among the mixed population of Somalis, Banyans, Parsis, Jews, Arabs, and Europeans who comprised the 25,000 inhabitants of Aden. He gazed with wonder upon the fortifications which made this place the Gibraltar of the Indian Ocean, and the vast cisterns where the English engineers were at work, 2,000 years after the engineers of Solomon. Very curious, said Passepartout to himself on returning to the steamer. I see that this is by no means useless to travel, if a man wants to see something new. At 6 p.m. the Mongolia slowly moved out of the roadstead and was once more on the Indian Ocean. She had 168 hours in which to reach Bombay, and the sea was favorable, the wind being in the northwest, with the sails aiding the engine. The steamer rolled a little. The ladies, in fresh toilets, reappeared on deck, and singing and dancing were resumed. The trip was being accomplished most successfully, and Passepartout was enchanted with the congenial companion which he had chanced to secure himself in the person of the delightful Fix. On Sunday, October 20th, towards noon, they came in sight of the Indian coast. 2 hours later, the pilot came on board. A range of hills lay against the sky in the harbor, and soon the rows of palms which adorned Bombay came distinctly into view. The steamer entered the road formed by the islands in the bay, and 4:30 she hauled up again at the quays of Bombay. Phileas Fogg was in the act of finishing the 33rd rubber of voyage, and his partner and himself having, by a bold stroke, captured all 13 of the tricks, concluding this fine campaign with a brilliant victory. The Mongolia was due at Bombay on the 22nd. She arrived on the 20th. This was to a gain of Phileas Fogg of 2 days since his departure from London, and he calmly entered the fact in his itinerary in the column of gains. This is the end of chapter 9. So they went down the Red Sea, which which forms the coast of Saudi Arabia and Egypt. It splits the two of them. And then they coaled up in Aden, which is at the end of the Persian Gulf in the Red Sea. And then they went across the Indian Ocean into Bombay. And they did this in the fall. So this is October. So that's a good season in Bombay, in the Indian Ocean. Because in the springtime, Northern Hemisphere spring, they have the monsoons, which is just rain, 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 rain. Heavy rain, downpours, drenching. Not good for travel. And so Phileas Fogg just sat beneath the decks and played whist. Whist is kind of like bridge, which is kind of like pinochle. Card game. You bid. You pick a trump suit. Trumps take everything. And then you try to make tricks. So a trick is everyone puts down a card and the high card takes it. And you have to follow suit. And I'm not too familiar with whist. I'd more play bridge, pinochle. But whist is played along a similar way. And because you have 4 people playing, and there's 52 cards in the deck, that means 52 divided by 4 is 13. So there's 13 tricks, which corresponds to all of the cards in a suit from ace to king. Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king. So that's 13 cards. And yeah, 13 hands. So they played 33 rubbers. And in bridge, a rubber is a set number of games that add up to is winning a rubber. To win a rubber, you have to win 2 games. As I said, this is bridge. I haven't played whist, but bridge, you have to win 2 games. And to win a game, you have to get 100 points below the line. And bridge has very complicated scoring, but it's kind of fun to play and gets really tricky. And my grandmother was just like this whiz at bridge. And she played viciously. I mean, she probably could have given Fogg a run for his money. And her theory was you should go down half the time, which means you should bid and then fail to make it. And there's penalties for going down. But the only way you win games is if you take the bid. So her feeling was that you should go down about half the time. And yeah, she would go down about half the time, and the other half of the time she would make it. And if she didn't take the bid, you probably went down because, oh, man, bridge players, whist players, they count cards. And they know, where things are. I've seen people do it. It gets spooky. It's like, okay, play the jack. It's like, how do you know I have the jack? I count the cards. So you have the jack. So, that's something you'll learn. When you play cards enough and you watch where they are, you learn where all of the cards end up without actually, knowing where the cards are. It's because you can tell by what people play what they have and what they don't have. And by what people bid what they have and what they don't have. So that's kind of a cool thing. Anyway, that was chapter 9.